culture where we believe in separation of church and state. And it's my understanding that Islam feels or believes that the church and the state really must function together. Can you explain, does that come out of the Qur'an, or is that a later development?
No, the legislative system that Muhammad instituted was pretty much improvised from crisis to crisis. There's no legislative system in the Gospels either. Jesus didn't set up a state. And when Pilate asks him, "Are you a king of the Jews?" he said, "My kingdom is not of this earth." And that's pretty much what Muhammad was saying, but of course, almost instantly when they died, both Christianity and Judaism also, of course, it made the church and state, the theocratic state. We went through a theocratic state as Christians. In fact, it was as late as the 19th century the Pope finally said you can have a secular state and a religious populace. He had been denying that all the way through up to and through the 19th century. So putting together later history and the original inspiration is a difficult but necessary task for all of the three peoples of the book, as the Qur'an calls them, the Abrahamic and Mosaic and Christian and Islamic. One of the things that has been totally agreed on in the larger Muslim community is that the Islamic state, so-called, was not a state and doesn't have any Quranic background. They are no more authentic than the Christian terrorists who try to upset abortion clinics and that kind of thing. That you have to be pretty religiously dumb to do that. And unfortunately, it's pretty easy to misrepresent Islam because so few have read the Qur'an. This book I published is a product of my shame. I was embarrassed. After 9/11, I was talking with a group of friends, academic friends, and we were wondering, is this really an Islamic event, the 9/11 attack? And at some point, people asked, well, who here has read the Qur'an? None of us had. And a friend of mine said, not even you, Garry? I thought you were a student of religion. And I said, yeah, that's the problem. I'm totally ashamed. And so I went and have been trying to repair that stupidity ever since. But I've tried in a lot of venues to ask how many people have read the Qur'an. Dare I do it now? How many have read the Qur'an? A minority, certainly. Well, I don't want to shame you, but I do. I think we should all be ashamed. We're throwing our weight around in a world where almost a quarter of the population are Muslims. And not to know, how can you say the Islamic State is a false construct if you don't know what true Islam is?
Following up on your last comments, your book is entitled What the Qur'an Meant. I'm wondering if you know how Islamic theologians agree with your interpretation.
Yeah, most do. In fact, I've been getting correspondence from many Muslims. I relied in great part on a whole range of scholars, but the Study Qur'an, a big 5-author, 2,000-page, up-to-date book, giving the best of the scholarship that's available now. And I draw on that heavily, and one of the authors wrote to tell me how pleased he was that we agreed. So I'm not... the past tense in what the Quran meant, I also wrote a book called What the Gospels Meant and What Paul Meant. I mean, what did it mean to its original audience? It means all kinds of things later on, some good, some bad, both for Paul and for the Gospels and for the Quran. But if we don't want to get tangled up in the complicated history of various interpretations, we have to go back and try to create, as far as we can, what was the vocabulary, the social setting, all of that for the original revelations. And then people can find out what happened to it later on. But if we don't have that for a starting point, we'll just wander in a maze, it seems to me.
How does Muhammad in the Quran explain the existence of evil in the world?
Humans are not God. They are limited and fallible, and they do horrible things. And that's why when you're sent to hell, your skin's going to tell the truth even if you don't. So nobody can really explain evil, but the problem is, if God can prevent evil, why doesn't he or she? And the answer is always free will. People are free to love, but free not to love. And if you want freedom, that's a dangerous game. So I don't think it really explains any more than the book of Job does, or the letters of Paul do. It's a horrible event in our lives, and one can only hope that more people will use freedom to do things like read the Quran rather than hate the Muslims.